Today is the day we finally fixed this bogging 1995 Honda Cr250. At this point, we probably have now 55 hours into this thing, trying to diagnose this bogging problem. We bought this bike for $2,000 a couple months ago, and I've literally tried every single thing to get this thing to stop bogging. So we tore this thing down probably 3 times, rebuilt it, cleaned out the power valves, adjusted the power valves, checked the reeds, swapped carbs with another Cr250 I had, rejetted it probably 1,000,000 times, changed spark plugs, changed coils. We have gone through everything on this bike. So last video, we had changed out the crank seals, we put it back together, and we had welded up the case. There's a hole in the case that was causing an air leak. So we fixed all those problems, and it still had the bog. So I'm thinking it's something electrical at this point. So either CDI or stator. So luckily enough, we actually bought another 1995 Honda Cr250, and we got this running perfectly. So I know all the electronics on this bike are perfect. So what we can do now is swap over all the good electronics, the CDI, the stator, the coil, from that bike over to this bike and see if that fixes our problem, and then kind of eliminate the problem that way. We also bought a leak down tester. This is the kit from eBay. So it comes with the gauge, that goes into the intake boot, and then these seal off the cylinder. And then what you want to do is put like 5 PSI in here and see if any air escapes throughout the engine. So I'm curious to see what that leak down test shows today as well. Maybe it will show us something that we somehow missed. But this thing's got all new gaskets, everything's brand new, so there's no way it should be leaking anything. All right, we're gonna begin with the leak down test. I'm curious to see if this crank seal's bad. We replaced the right side crank seal, but not the left side. So I'm wondering if that's leaking by a little bit. It looks really tight. It looks like it's sealing. Alright, carb is out. We'll hang that off to the side here. Let that dangle. And the tool we have goes right into the intake here. We might have to swing up the subframe here. So then we can clamp that down and twist on our gauge. And like I said before, we want about 5 PSI in there. Otherwise you can blow out the seals on the engine. And typically you let this thing sit for 5 minutes. If any air escapes after 5 minutes, that means you have a leak in the system somewhere. And that can be causing all sorts of problems. So when we tried to jet this thing, no jet change made any difference. So that tells me that it's either electrical or there's a really, really bad leak somewhere. Alright, subframe's out of the way. Let's see if this will fit in here now. All right, now we can tighten that down. Now we have to get something that'll fit in here and plug this hole. So the attachment that came in the kit was wrong. They gave me like 1.5, and this is a 2-inch plug. And it looks like that's gonna fit right in there. So you just tighten that down, and it should expand that rubber so that it plugs up that hole for the exhaust. So now it's nice and tight in there. So 2 inches is what you want for the Cr250. most kits don't come with a 2-inch. All right, that's nice and tight. We want to make sure the plug is tight so that no air can leak out of the plug. All right, that plug is tight. Let's get some air in the system here. Let's put a little bit in. It's draining pretty good. Huh. It's leaking out of something. Alright, so air is definitely leaking out. We're going to try to spray some soapy water around here and see if we can see where it's coming from. Just spray all around the engine here. Alright, now we'll put a little bit more in. I didn't see any bubbles. So I'm not seeing any bubbles forming, but you can see the needle goes down almost instantly. We'll continuously add air. See if we see anything. There's one right here. That's a big bubble forming. Yeah, there's a leak right here. All right, we put some Teflon tape around the attachment to where it goes into the gauge here. So we're gonna try this again, see if it still leaks. Yep, it's still leaking. Not as much. Well, it looks like it's holding. It's going down really slow. We're going to take off the power valve cap here. Oh, look at that. Yeah, power valve area. That's weird. So we have an air leak at the power valve. So what would cause that? All right, so apparently, I guess a lot of guys have air leaks out of the power valve system because the venting from the power valves. So what happens is air can vent out, but it can't be sucked back in. So I guess it's very common. A lot of guys say that the moly grease they use on the power valve linkage prevents that leak. So I don't know which one to trust. Grease eventually dissolves and wears off and doesn't make a tight seal anyway. So what we're gonna do is test the other Cr250. I know this one runs perfect. So if this one has a leak at the power valves right here, we know that's not the problem and we can move on. If it doesn't have a leak, we know that this one has a problem sealing off those power valves. All right, we're stripping down this Cr250. Let's get the carb off of here and install that leak down tester kit and see if it leaks out of the power valves. I'd be amazed if it did not. I just want to make sure we don't have an issue with the other bike. All right, get this guy out. All right, put that off to the side here. We can install the plug into the cylinder here. Tighten that up. And that's not leaking at all. Oh yeah, it's leaking. Let's see if it's out of the power valve. It's a slow leak. After I took that off. Yeah. So I think that's common. You know, maybe the O-ring on the other one isn't sealing it tight. So it was holding pretty good with this cap in place. So let's just see if we tighten that back down if it holds. Put a little bit of air in there. Alright, we put 10 psi in. It's holding pretty good. It's leaking a little bit though. Let's see if it's still leaking around here. It's losing like a psi per minute. So at least we know it's common to leak out of here. You see it's slowly going down. So we are going to put a new O-ring on the other one, tighten that back down and see if it holds about the same PSI as this bike. Put this cap back on here. We'll really tighten that down. As you can see, it's holding pretty good right now. But you can see it's slowly going down. So that's about the same as the other bike. So I don't think it's that air leak at the power valve. That bike ran perfect and that's got the same leak. So I think it's electronics. So we are going to swap out all the good ones right over to this bike, test it out, and then slowly take those good ones off to see which electronic fixed their problem. So what did the leak down test tell us? It told us that we know for sure there's no leak by the manifold here. There's no leak by the left side crank seal here. And there's no leak by the head gasket. So any place where it could be sucking in air, it is not. All right, we'll start by swapping over the coil. So this coil we actually swapped over to make this bike run from the other bike. So we know this coil is good. So we can put this back on the other bike. So this can go just like this. The ground is good, everything looks good. All right, let's get the CDI off and we'll swap this over. I should be able to get the CDI out. It slides off this rubber piece here. There we go. And then detaches from here. Should pull right out through here. All right, let's get that hooked up. All right, this grounds the coil. All right, these go to there. This goes to the kill switch. Where are those wires up here? Could try swapping the flywheel too. I've never done that before. So that could be the flywheel as well. We'll just swap everything over. We'll do the flywheel as well. Doesn't hurt. Alright, stator coming out. So we will swap over the stator and the flywheel. Going on next here. Do a little bit. There we go. Now we can get the flywheel on. The woodruff key moved again. There we go. Washer. nut. Alright, everything is hooked up. Everything's perfect. We're going to swap out the spark plugs too, just to make sure that wasn't the problem. We're not leaving anything to chance. And we'll go grab the other spark plug out. Alright, this is from the other bike going in. Alright, get her cap on there. Alright, every single part for the electrical is swapped out and onto the dirt bike that bogs. We took everything off the good bike. You can see it's all stripped down. So what we're going to do is test this one out first, and we're going to bring along all the old parts and slowly add them back on so we can see which one of the parts was the problem. Alright, we got the bike back together. One more thing I did was change out that gas line. This video, a lot of people said that was collapsing and not allowing enough gas to flow through. So we'll see with the new one if there's any improvements, but everything is back on the bike, good to go. Everything's swapped over from the other bike, so let's see what happens. Well, fired good up on the stand. Will it still bog at full throttle? We will find out right now. Oh, it better not bog. Here we go. It better not bog. That's gotta be fixed. Not pretty bad. Finally, no more bog. Oh, that feels so good. So now I've spent like 60 hours on this thing and we finally got rid of the bog. Now we're gonna start tearing parts off of it and replacing them with the old parts. But yeah, somewhere in the electrical system that we replaced fixed our problem. Oh, that is awesome. This thing's running great. Thing is awesome. That's the way it's supposed to run. All right, so what we're gonna start with is the stator first. We'll take that off, the flywheel off, and we will put the old one back on and see if it bogs with the old one back on. Then we'll know it's the stator that was the problem. I have a feeling it's a stator. Typically CDIs don't go bad too often. Alright, so this is the known good stator. It's marked good. put the old one back on. All right, old stator going back on. All right, old stator back on. Let's take it for a test drive. If it bogs, it was the stator all along. Alright, surprisingly, it was not the stator. The stator was not the problem. It runs good with that old stator in there. So next up is the CDI. Let's replace that with the old one. See if it still bogs. I'm really surprised it's not the stator. Yeah, I'm just baffled that it's not the stator. Thought for sure it would be. It's got to be the CDI. Get the new one off and we'll replace that with the old one. See what happens. Old one going back on here. Alright, CDI is changed out with the old one. Let's see if it bogs now. Well, this is getting very bizarre. So now both the CDI and the stator swapped out with the old one. Still runs good. No bogging. What the heck? The only other thing I replaced was the gas line right here. So maybe that was crimping on the other one, or the flywheel. So let's put the old flywheel back on and see if maybe that was the problem. Well, the mystery continues. What is causing this bog? It's got to be the flywheel, right? That's the only other thing we replaced. So we're gonna try to get that out next. That would be so weird if it was the flywheel. Alright, here's the old flywheel. Let's get that back on. Alright, old flywheel is back on. Let's see if that was our problem. I cannot believe that. It was the flywheel all along. That is absolutely insane. We wouldn't have ever been able to find that out without swapping parts like that, because you can't test the flywheel. But something must be wrong with the flywheel. Maybe one of the magnets is off. I don't know, but that's a pretty inexpensive fix. I thought for sure it was going to be either the CDI or the stator. I think the flywheel is probably the same price as the stator, but it can't be more than $100. So we finally found the problem after all this diagnostics work. Of course, it's the last thing we check. Oh, that feels so good. Wow. Did any of you guys predict correctly? I did not. that was like the last thing I thought it was gonna be. Wow, and I almost didn't even swap it over. So we finally found the issue of the Bogging 1995 Cr250. Woohoo! We can finally be done with this bike. Wow. That makes me so happy. We'll have to take that flywheel off and inspect it once we get back home. All right, made it back home. I still can't believe it was the flywheel this whole time. We've got like 60 hours into this bike, and it turned out to be the flywheel. Just crazy to me. But let's take a look at the flywheel next. Just check it out, see if there's any damage to the flywheel that we may have missed. Here is the good flywheel. That's what that one looks like. Alright, here it is. You can actually see there is a little damage on there. Look at that. Oh, there's the damage right there. So that signals the pickup coil. That piece right there, look, it's rounded off. Wow. So I'm guessing what was happening is this was rotating around. Here's the pickup coil right here. This rotates around, and as this piece comes around, it wasn't making a good signal with that because it's so much lower. See that? Right there it's low, right there it's high. So I'm guessing it was like breaking up the spark every time it went around like that, and that's why it was failing and bogging. Isn't that something? So I'm wondering how that happened. I'm guessing this came off at one point and crunched up the old stator if this was on a different bike. But yeah, that's some damage. I missed that before. Because when it's in there, you can't really tell, you know? But, yep, that was the whole problem. Alright, so that looks like a good used condition 1995 Cr250 flywheel for $70. Not too bad. We're gonna order that up, and then this bike will be completely fixed. I also bought a new clutch for it, clutch basket, because the other one was grooved pretty bad. Here's an OEM one that's a lot better, so we'll install that too, and then a new coil as well. So once we get the clutch installed and the flywheel installed, this thing is going to be fixed for good. I cannot believe it was that flywheel. But definitely feels good to fix it, find the bogging problem, and be done with this bike. I think I've made like 4 videos on this bike, and we could not solve this issue. So definitely feels good. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this whole series, picking this thing up for $2,000, diagnosing it, tearing it down, and then swapping parts finally with the other 1995 Cr250, and finding out that the flywheel was bad. Man, oh man. I was not expecting that. Thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for subscribing. Stay tuned for next video, and until next time, we are out. And there's Vinny. He just whispered to me that he knew the problem all along and just didn't tell me. Can't believe that dog. Did you know the problem all along? How'd you know, Vin? How'd you know it was the flywheel? Master Mechanic Vin knew all along and didn't say a word.